The following content has been provided by RWTH Aachen University.
So the first one we're going to look at is the put that there feature from 1980 at MIT. The idea of this system, as we will see, is to let you, imagine a system that can recognize human gestures, so that can actually see where I'm pointing in a room at a display, at a wall display, and combine that with voice and combining voice with other input modalities, so pointing plus voice. And the name put that there will make sense to you because that is actually sort of the interaction technique that we'll see here. This was presented in SIGGRAPH in 1980. I'll roll the video. This is kind of fun. You'll also hear a synthesized computer voice, which will sound incredibly dorky by today's standards. But it was, back then the way that these things would work. And this system, I talked to somebody who was involved in this and who knew the main author here. And she said this stuff was actually working. This was not a completely fake demo.
Move that.
Where?
There. Well.
OK, so for the first part, what was new here? What were the interaction styles that we saw here? Very straight from the video. What was going on? Yeah.
Voice commands?
Voice commands, yes. So the system was recognizing spoken commands. And yeah, I can do Siri today, so that kind of seems to be there, right? Anything else? Yeah?
There was some kind of KI which asks if some misunderstandings happen.
Aha.
What command or where?
Yes, yes. So the system was actually asking, and artificial intelligence was definitely big there. And MIT was big and is big in artificial intelligence. So this was definitely a big part. It was parsing the grammar of the spoken input, was asking back if it didn't get parts of the question, and could actually fill in the gaps when it had asked for a part of it. Yes?
Would you call that already an AI? Because in my point of view, the computer just looked for keywords. You could notice that when the machine asks which command, and he said change.
Yeah.
So it's just looking, okay, where are the keywords? It doesn't. I think it doesn't try to understand the whole sentence, but just those words.
It's a good point. It's a good point. So it's not a conversational agent, and we'll actually see a video that will have a quite different expectation of the speech understanding. I completely agree here. You had to say very specific things and very clear, simple sentences. It wasn't like, hey, how about putting that thing there? So you had to actually be very clear. The system was working at the time, which was probably part of the reason why it's so limited. However, one thing I find still quite interesting, why I think AI is not a wrong word here. You may have noticed this in some of the things that he was saying. He wasn't saying, put this over here or put this south of Jamaica. He was saying something slightly different. Did you notice that? That expected some more understanding of what had happened, yes? Yeah, make it what it was, or put that where it was. So while it's not a conversational agent that understands, continuous speech or anything, it was building, as it went along, it was building a record of the interaction so far. So it was able to refer back to earlier things that had happened and derive what you were saying from its own history of commands. And yeah, from today's point of view, we can probably imagine how you would code that. Not easy, but imaginable. But that was kind of like the level of artificial intelligence or command understanding that was imaginable and that was actually implementable at the time. Yeah.
And besides, it recognized names like Jamaica and stuff, so they probably aren't commands either. So that's also needs a certain kind of artificial intelligence to recognize these names.
Recognize the names. Yeah. Well, although my assumption is if you had said, move that west of Aachen, it would have said what, So clearly, like with all this early AI work, it was a very small model world that you were actually understanding, right? So if you had said, oh, by the way, can you also order some books from Amazon, apart from the fact that Amazon didn't exist, nor did the web exist, it wouldn't have known what you're talking about. So, all right, so that's the first part, and then we'll continue this with the second part of the demo where we'll see a couple more things. Although I should also point out, I think the other thing that's really key here is you could say things, put that there. And just for a second, turn on your programmer brain and imagine writing code that parses continuous speech, not continuous speech, but parses speech commands, gets them in, also is looking at a continuous tracking of some input device, and he wasn't pushing buttons on that thing, right? It was just pointing. So you have to figure out, when I'm saying something, at that time I have to kind of look, where are you pointing, and then interpret that as part of my command that's being put in, coming in from multiple modalities. So the pointing device and the voice commands are really streaming into one command together and are being parsed as one single thing. So that's not trivial to build and to make work reasonably reliable. So let's look at the maybe the two-part interaction here, two people interaction.
Copy the freighter.
Chris, do you agree?
No way. Thanks a heap.
You also.
All right, so that's two people interaction. So now we're actually seeing a system that is able to, well, not maybe follow a conversation, but that sort of was able not to listen to certain things and only jump in when it was being alerted, right? It was saying things like pay attention or clear, something like that. And it was also asking back questions. So it was almost becoming a third agent in the discussion. Of course, very limited, very strict vocabulary rules here. But I think this is already given that this came out 1 year before the invention or the advent of the PC. I'd like to remind you of that. Quite a visionary idea of how interaction with computers could happen. And today we can kind of see that voice commands are actually gradually becoming things that actually work, kind of 30 years later. And we also see that pointing, when you're playing with your Wii at home, you're basically using a similar input technique there. But systems that combine voice and gesture pointing in this very natural way that for us people is completely obvious. When I say, hey, could you move that desk here over, that board over there to this wall, everybody knows what I'm talking about. That's still something. I don't really see any computing system that I can readily install at home that would be able to do that.
This content was provided by RWTH Aachen University.